Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Daily Dose. This is my first virtual interview. I have Toya and Hope. So the caption lets you know that this is a discussion about Roe v. Wade with U.S. women from the U.S. and the U.K. So Hope is from the U.K. Introduce yourself, Hope.
Hi, I'm Hope, and I am a student journalist from the UK. I'm honoured to be part of this discussion because obviously as a woman and also as someone who does live in Britain, the US and the UK are so tight-knit that things that do affect the US sometimes do trickle down on us as a country as well. And obviously our heart goes to all women in the US whenever they're going through something and vice versa. So I'm happy to be here.
Yay, thank you, Hope, for coming. So actually, Hope was the reason for this podcast. She reached out, and you're writing the paper, right, Hope?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, so Hope wanted me to answer some questions, and I'm like, well, I'm not as educated in this topic, but I did need some content for the podcast. So I said, why not make this a whole video and a real thing? So I invited Toya, who is not an expert, she says, but she is more educated than me and Hope, per se, a little bit more. So Toya, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Toya. I am a woman living in the United States, in the, I guess, northern eastern region of the United States. And though in my particular state, this issue is not as much as severe and at risk in terms of women's care, it's still very, a topic that is very dear to my heart, because it's, if any woman is at threat of not getting the access and services she needs, then that impacts everybody, regardless of region. So this is an important conversation.
Yay, thanks, Toya. Thanks so much for coming with me. Okay. So first I'm going to go into, so basically me and Hope are going to go back and forth asking questions. She's going to ask us questions specifically for her paper. And I'm just going to ask questions to carry on the conversation for the podcast. So you get a 2-in-1, basically. So first, I'm just going to give a little history about the topic. Okay, so Roe v. Wade was a landmark decision of the U.S. Supreme Court, in which the court ruled that the Constitution of the United States generally protects a pregnant woman's liberty to choose to have an abortion. So going back a little bit, in January 22nd, 1973, rule was 7-2. So basically, 7 justices ruled that you cannot tell a woman that she can or cannot have an abortion, and some were like, I think you can. So that's where we got Roe v. Wade. And recently, in 2022, that decision was overruled. So Toya, can you give us a little bit about what you know and what you've seen in the news, or a little bit of background, whatever you may have? I know you're not an expert, but yeah.
Like I said, I'm no expert, but the Roe v. Wade, though the overturn is new, right? It's been a long time coming, in that there have been a lot of behind the scenes in different states to strip down the tenets of what the Roe v. Wade case provided for folks, and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, Planned Parenthood stripping funds for those type of programs and type of services. And, with the more conservative, Republican leaning politicians finding loopholes and ways to restrict abortion access. For example, in Georgia, you have to you have only 6 weeks, and most women don't even know.
Oh, wow.
They're pregnant when they're 6, at 6 weeks, they may not even know. So it's been a consistent stripping down. And I feel like this was kind of the final, way for them to do it, and packing the court. What really concerns me too is, the Supreme Court is now more conservative. And that's a concern, because this can really only be the beginning of really stripping down some crucial rights that women have, communities of color, and more vulnerable populations will have to, be heavily impacted by. So, like I said, this is just a really important conversation, and it's a lot of nuance to it. So though it seems like, oh, it was here today, going tomorrow, this has been decades in the making of this decision.
Yeah. And Hope, have you seen anything like this in the UK? Any kind of...
That's what really scares me, and that's why I want to be here to talk to you guys, because a lot of people, most of the time, you don't really pay attention to something until it's at the critical stage. Like Toya was just saying, when I was doing a bit of background reading, the case has been fought from the day that it was ruled in. There has been people fighting against it. Like, they've not stopped. Do you know what I mean? There's been, I think, 2004, 2007. That's just me trying to remember off the top of my head the dates that I've seen when they were in court, like fighting that the abortion legislation. And as for the UK, I've never thought one day, oh, abortion rights are at risk, or there's a potential that they could be revoked. But, now it's just like the government, they do things. And if you're not there, if you're not tuning in, these things are going on behind your back and you don't necessarily know. And honestly, I genuinely don't know in terms of where we stand with that. And it's definitely going to be a discussion now as well. I don't think we're at risk of abortion being illegal in the UK. But, I didn't think it was going to happen in America.
Yeah.
So, yeah, honestly.
Yeah. I think, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jordan.
Was this like a surprise to you guys?
It really was, because you guys are like, what, the land of the free, and we have all these dreams about the US. Like, I'm not gonna lie, we do idolize you guys a little bit as a country. Like, I'm just being very honest. Some people might disagree with me, but we do. We want the lifestyle. We want to go to LA and see the Hollywood sign. We want to be, it's very glamorous on the outside. What we see, obviously, we hear the stories about the guns, the school shootings, and all that stuff. We kind of like, okay, with the guns and all that stuff, it's kind of become a norm. It shouldn't, but it has police brutality, all that stuff. We're kind of like, we're used to it. We kind of expect it. But the abortion stuff now, that completely took us all by surprise, to be honest.
Wow.
And I think too, I think people in the United States tend to look at it as because basically the ruling is that it's up to the states. So it's not completely illegal throughout the whole entire country. But to what degree you can get an abortion, you have access to abortion, whether you can or cannot, they're leaving it up to state legislators. So I think sometimes, I've talked to a couple of people just in passing, because it comes up, I was at the dentist and, somebody brought it up and they said, oh, we'll just drive over to another state. It's so much bigger than that. In where I happen to live, this is not as a major concern, because our senator and governor and things has not ruled in a way to limit access. Whereas you're talking about Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, Georgia, those type of places is where they're really restricting a woman's right to choose. So I think sometimes Americans tend to look at, well, what's happening in my local region, but so much bigger than that. You might have access, but it's about also supporting the woman, in Mississippi who may not have that access and really find herself possibly in an unsafe situation because she's trying to seek it illegally or, underground and different things like that. So it can really be a public health issue on top of, social justice issue.
Right. Yeah. So I have a list of justices. As you can see, the bad outweighed the good. Just more people wanted to overturn Roe versus Wade, and that's what ended up happening.
And where the concern is, in particular to the Supreme Court, I've been following this as well, is that those more recent justices at their confirmation here said that they would not do this.
Oh, really?
So you lied under oath. And so, a lot of politicians, more progressive politicians, are speaking out against that because that's a problem. That's more than just, saying, at a job interview and saying, oh, yeah, I'm a morning person and not being a morning person. Yeah. These people have a lot of power, and these people are seen as the people that make the final decision on things. So it's just very concerning to be at a confirmation hearing and be told that you're not going to do something, and then you go in and that's exactly what you do. It really it makes you question the moral, code of the Supreme Court and what and should the Supreme Court be the say all be all kind of law of the land type of thing? Are they able to uphold if you're already starting off with completely going against what you said you would do under oath? So that's a big issue as well.
They just saying what we want to hear, basically, just to get in office and say, oh, forget that. Oh, well, this is what I want to do.
So that lack of accountability, but that's really in existence in a lot of levels of our government, where people say they're going to do certain things or say certain things, and then in office, do other things. So I think it's a part of a larger conversation in that way too.
That's news to me. That's a whole nother conversation. That's crazy. I never heard about that. Okay, Hope. You want the first question?
Okay, so in terms of abortion, it's associated very widely with two terms, and some people may be familiar with these, but I just wanted a confirmation of the definition of pro-life and the definition of pro-choice, and a little bit into depth of what they mean for women. And if someone is pro-life or pro-choice, it doesn't, and what it necessarily means from like, I don't know, a personal perspective. Someone could be pro-life, but they could still believe in abortion. I don't know, maybe just a little clarification there.
You want to?
Yeah, take that up.
So pro-life, from what I get from what I read and things like that, is pro-life is those who believe under any circumstances a baby, no matter if it's an ectopic pregnancy, if you might not be ready for a pregnancy, but whatever it is, you must carry on with that pregnancy. You must give birth to that baby. Now, pro-choice, I believe, is the opposite. You believe that women have the choice to keep or not keep the child. So yeah.
And from my understanding, pro-life is the idea that life begins at conception. So as soon as a woman becomes pregnant, that is a life that has rights to come into this world. Whereas pro-choice, and then I feel like there are kind of nuances with the pro-life thing as well. Some do believe by no circumstance should a woman get an abortion, whereas others do believe that in extreme circumstances that they should have access to that in case of sexual assault, for example, or child abuse, things like that, or at the life of the mother is at risk, things like that. Whereas pro-choice means that the woman has the right to choose, to regardless of circumstance, regardless of situation, they have autonomy over what they choose to do with their body. Some people, I feel like, what makes me uncomfortable sometimes is when people say that pro-choice is pro-abortion, because that's not necessarily true. I feel like I'm not sure where that term came from. But they'll say, yeah, somebody's pro-abortion. And that doesn't mean that you're pro people should get abortions, but you might be pro a woman. That should be between her and her doctor to make that decision if she wants to have that child. And so the pro-abortion, I've been hearing that, and it kind of, to me, can get lost in translation using language like that. But pro-choice definitely just means a woman has the right to choose what she wants to do with her body.
Definitely. And that choice has been taken away from a lot of women in a lot of states in America right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You were actually going into this, Toya, in terms of women and when it becomes a medical complication to carry on with a pregnancy, where can doctors, I don't know, I'm sure that they're probably still talking about this, or because I just read a story the other day on Instagram where doctors literally had to put a woman on hold who was basically near death to make confirmations with lawyers, like, am I able to abort this pregnancy?
You stole my story.
Sorry?
Michelle, I said you stole my story. Go ahead, carry on.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll show her.
Maybe you can develop on the question, because that's basically the question.
Fine, it's fine.
Yeah. When does a doctor step in? Do they know that the laws have they been laid out, or are these calls having to be made every time a woman comes in with a case where her life is in danger?
I think there is so much gray area that when you have people who make decisions for other people, that, we're talking about a decision that's been made predominantly by men.
Right.
We're talking about a decision that was made predominantly by politicians who are not physicians, who do not provide this care for women. So I think sometimes what happens when you have people at the table who don't really reflect the actual people who are impacted by that issue is they see it as black and white. Yes to abortion, no to abortion. And they don't understand the very intricate nuances. They don't understand all the different, times that abortion is considered. They might be viewing it in one way. A woman comes in, she doesn't want a baby, and she has the abortion. Whereas it's so many nuances as to how a woman makes that decision, why that decision might be made. And they don't consider those things. So once it was overturned, you had politicians go immediately cancel all abortions, cancel this. All right, so we're shutting down all of these services, not even understanding the nuances of why those services are sought out, not understanding why a woman it might be a lifesaver for her to have that abortion. So I think that this is what we're seeing is when you don't have all point of views at the table, you don't have that conversation, and you're not coming from a point of understanding. You're coming from a point of dominance. You just want things a certain way and you don't care how it happens. I think that physicians are in a precarious situation because they want to take care of their patient, but they don't want to risk their license. They don't want to risk their freedom because there are laws that are even coming out. Even if you give someone a ride to an abortion clinic, that you can be prosecuted, you can be sued.
You're an accessory.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You're an accessory.
Right. Yes. So it's just so when you have all of these nuances, I understand that a physician would want to make those calls and make sure that they're able to do things. And unfortunately, in that particular situation, life is at risk. The life of the mother or the woman is at risk. So, I think that they don't consider the nuances and they make these blanketed judgments and not really understanding exactly what they're doing. That's the simplest way to put it.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, how long are these people going to be alive anyway? Like, they're probably, some of these people are relatively old, and the next years from now, I mean, maybe they're making decisions based on their generations and how they want their generations to live, but, it's affecting a much wider people than that, different communities.
And I think, too, what the Supreme Court looks like, and this is where I feel like younger generations being a part of the political process, voting, is really important, because what the Supreme Court has looked like and what it could look like can be different things. Right now, you get on a Supreme Court, you're on it for life. So if you live another 50 years, that's your appointment for another 50 years. So if you have that mindset for the next 50 years, that can impact a lot of progress. That can, really halt change. So should the Supreme Court have terms where you only can be on the Supreme Court for a certain amount of time? Should that be a lifelong appointment, especially if, again, you have people who've said one thing at their confirmation hearing and doing something in complete contrast? So I think, it's a lot of, I think what we're seeing in real time is a reckoning with, do the systems that are currently in place, one, are they working for us? And two, is there a possibility to reimagine something different? And how do we go about doing that?
Yeah, because that's crazy. 50 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lifelong appointment. And I mean, though the people that were just appointed are older, they are by no means old. They can still have possibly another 40, 50 years to be a part of the course. Some of the older ones, perhaps not. But, Ruth Bader Ginsburg lived a very long time. She's an example of that. So she was on that court for a very long time. So, should it be that way where you have these lifelong appointments where you're on it for the rest of your life? It might be just time to imagine something different in how the Supreme Court, there's been a lot expanding the Supreme Court, right? Making sure that there are a balance within the Supreme Court so it's not right leaning or left leaning type of during times in history. So I just feel like it just might be a good time to just reimagine what these systems look like, especially if, we're not, as a people, we're not getting the outcomes that we want.
And that's exactly right, because if you're telling me you get on there at age 40 and you still on there at 90, it's like things have changed up there in your brain. Like, okay, so some companies will pay travel expenses for their employees who need to travel in order to get an abortion. What do you guys think about that? Both Hope and Latoya.
That did not sit right with me at first. I don't know why, because I mean, it's a good, I can't say it's a good thing and a bad thing. You just have to look at it as, do these companies really care about these individuals and their well-being, or do they just don't want employers having babies? And, so they're like, it just morally, it just doesn't sit right with me. Like, some people will need that support because they might not necessarily have that travel expense, and they're genuinely doing it because they have evaluated their situation and they have come to the conclusion that I genuinely cannot bring this baby into the world because I am not capable right now necessarily. And on their part, it's okay. But then from the company's perspective, who sat in that boardroom and came to the conclusion that we're doing this because we care about these women, or we're doing this because it's at the expense of our company,
Yeah. Because the second part of my question was, do you think that this was like a business move, or do you think they actually genuinely care about these people? So yeah, go ahead, let's see. But you hit like, I don't really have an. Go ahead, Toya.
I think that it could be both. What we find is around a lot of issues such as this, we just had Pride Month, right? So we see a lot of companies are supportive of Pride and have the rainbow flag and all of these different things. And I think that there is a benefit to companies to back certain things. We live in a capitalist society where money green, right? Seeing green and making money tends to be the top priority. And so I do think that while some of these companies may care, I do think that some of these companies see this as an opportunity to look like the good guys, because looking like the good guys might generate more revenue. We might say, okay, Netflix is doing that. Oh, that's what's up. Let me keep my subscription, or let me go get my own subscription instead of using my cousin's. You get what I'm saying? So I think that sometimes, there is companies may have a genuine, desire to help folks, but I also am not remiss that they definitely, I'd be remiss to say, to definitely acknowledge that there's probably some type of PR, you know what I mean? They're able to look like I said, like the good guys, and look like, hey, we're on the right side of history, and come support our company, our major company.
Exactly.
And I think too, how we look at that is also surface level. So for example, if a major company is willing to support a woman getting an abortion, are they also supporting women in other ways? Are they also supporting having maternity leave that makes sense, having providing, birth control access to women? So I think we tend to be shown oh yeah, we're supportive in these ways, but behind the scenes, are your policies also supporting women in general in all areas, not just this one time where everything it's kind of a spotlight on this one issue, but all issues, so I think it's up to us to kind of start to look at companies in that way, and companies that don't challenge. Okay, are you just saying this because your policy is not supportive of women, because your policy doesn't support women in other ways? So I think it's up to us to kind of filter through that nuance, because they're always going to promote what they're supporting, how they're behind certain things. And that's how you separate the genuine, I feel like, from like the superficial, just showmanship. Mm-hmm.
We see that you're pro-choice, but do your policies align with what you're saying? Are you giving women enough maternity leave to go take care of that baby
because pro-choice is about a choice, right?
Yeah.
So I can decide I do want to have a baby or not. So are your policies aligning with whatever choice I want to make? I'm supported, right?
Exactly. Both sides.
Right.
There you go. Yeah. I was confusing myself. Yeah, because some companies, it's like, okay, you get a week off. It's like a week.
Mm-hmm. Right. Or you get, a lot of women have to seek other ways to get maternity leave, by paying into other insurances, so additional insurances and things like that. So I think that you have to look at how the company as a total, in its totality, support women, not just this one issue, because I feel like there's a lot of nuance to that, and companies will show what they do support and promote all of that. But I think to really show the support, you have to support women who make any choice.
Honestly, yeah, not just in the spotlight.